And I told the Pope, I'm just calling to make a confession.
Meet the man who built the original Apple computer. Yes, Steve Jobs may have worn the turtlenecks and got the attention, but it was Steve Wozniak, back in that California garage, who actually built the 1976 Apple I, and with it, revolutionised personal computing forever. He is one of the fathers of Silicon Valley, but unlike his co-founder, Woz has charted a very different path. Woz, welcome to the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here.
So we're going to talk about your history, we're going to talk about the future, but I want to start with one of those stories that I've heard and I've never quite believed is true. Is it true?
Oh, it's got to be.
Yeah, maybe. Is it true that you once pretended to be Henry Kissinger and called the Pope?
Oh, it's totally true. Yeah,
All right. Let's tell
this story. That's a very well-known story. This was during college days. It's a long time ago, decades ago, but had the little device called a blue box that could go beep, 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 beep into American phones and wind up making free calls anywhere in the world. Right. So to show off, I would call places at Paris and blah, blah, blah. And so I, just as a joke, one time I said, well, I'll call the Pope.
As you do.
But you have to say you're someone to get through to them. I called Italy inward, I asked for Rome inward, I asked for the Vatican. And I said, well, I'm Henry Kissinger with Richard Nixon at the summit meeting in Moscow, and we'd like to speak to the Pope.
Did you at least do an accent? Because no one would have bought
Well, hold on. I'm only talking to an operator, so I did not do an accent at first. And she said, oh, it's 5:30 in the morning, you know. I said, well, wake him up. I'll call back in an hour. Called back in an hour, and then they start that goes in a little bit of an accent that I eventually wound up using on a dialogue joke.
I swear the distance between Henry Kissinger and Arnold Schwarzenegger with you is very, very close.
Yes. And I told the Pope, I'm just calling to make a confession.
That part I genuinely don't believe.
Okay.
All right, well, speaking of truth and lies, you've actually said that image of the early days of Apple, of two guys in a garage, is a bit of a myth created by advertising agencies. So separate truth from fiction for me.
It is accurate. We were two guys with a humble beginning, with no money, have to do anything you can out of your own house. Although the company, the idea that the garage was a company, is the image that people who hear the story get. Did we ever do any manufacturing in the garage? No. The business, Steve was in his bedroom on the phone getting parts and getting sales, and he may have extended the phone out to the garage eventually. But there were never more than about one or two people in the garage, and it was only needed really for a few hours a week to bring back the boards manufactured somewhere else. Then we'd drive them to the store and get paid.
It led to a $250 million business and the most popular typewriter-sized computer on the market today.
You have to go watch some kids using these things. What you see is an instantaneous reflection of a part of themselves.
So when you walk down the street and you see people with smartphones and Apple Watches and things like that, what flicks through your head?
I am so happy for my role at the very start. First, I think, though, 1 million people did really brilliant things with their brains and worked hard and put these products together and got us to where we got to. It's a lot of steps along the way, and I'm just one of them. I was a little cornerstone at an early point in time, and people, like symbols, so they look at us. So I feel very proud that my company just turned out to be so important to the world, to give a lot of tone, and also to say that products can be easy and they can be fun. Those two things were so desperately important in everything I did in life.
After your time with Apple, one of the things you did that was interesting was you went back to teach basically grade school, like year 5 and 6 kids, didn't you? Why did you do that?
I had had an early goal in my life to be an engineer and then be a teacher. I spoke to my father about it. I never forgot my words, and I wanted to teach if I could, and I want to help as many people as you can. You're one person, you can't help too many. So I had really wanted to be a teacher, and then I gradually tried it out, and I wound up loving it so much, basically 10-year-olds up to about 13-year-olds, and some classes I taught for teachers, and I would teach 200 hours a year. I didn't allow any press nearby. I didn't want them facing that thing that early in life.
All day we watched as there was a kind of global wake. On Facebook, millions changing their profiles to the Apple logo, a kind of black armband, a gesture of gratitude.
So much has been written and produced about the other Steve Jobs. How do you feel about the myth that surrounds Steve?
The problem is, you see some images, a few images online of Steve speaking. Wow, these are all esoteric things of the future I want to follow. He's very good at the future talk. He also learned a lot of very, very incredibly good marketing principles. He also talked like, oh no, we want to make the product so perfect and so good. And a lot of times I see that as myth, because a lot of times he wasn't really knowledgeable about really the best things that would have gone into a product. but a lot of times he was right. As a person, you see videos of him speaking when he knows he's addressing the public, but you don't see him in personal life, how he's addressing people that are friends of his, close to him, associates at work and this and that. You only hear stories, and so there's a lot of negatives there.
And for you personally, what actually do you feel about the man, the person that you knew, now that he's gone?
We were friends forever. We never find somebody who ever saw us argue or fight. When I said things that he would normally criticize somebody for not knowing something, he would actually respect me and treat me differently. He treats some people that way. We weren't close friends doing the same things together like we had in the Steve Jobs zero time before we started Apple. Once we started Apple, he definitely wanted to be the head of a company, known as the face of a company. I definitely just wanted to be an engineer in a laboratory, and I don't want to be near running companies. I don't like conflict, so I never had conflict with Steve Jobs either.
Just lastly, do you have a favorite device in the world?
My Segway I love.
You have a Segway?
I've had Segway since the start, and I have many Segways, and my wife and I use them to Segway into town from our living room.
No!
We carry them in our car so we can Segway in other towns.
That's hilarious.
And we play Segway Polo. It's a big part of our life.
Actually, that just reminds me, just before I let you go, is it true that you have a printer that can print out fake $2 notes?
Well, there's a printer in our hometown of Los Gatos that makes pads of $2 bills for me. Every sheet has 4 $2 bills perforated. You tear them off, but his quality is so good that they meet the specs of the U.S. government, and by law that makes them legal tender. I've been spending them for 20 years, over 20 years.
Isn't that kind of counterfeit?
That's what most people think. The Secret Service is in charge of counterfeit money in our country, and they've confronted me 3 times. They all agreed that the bills were good, but I gave them a fake ID that said I was a laser safety officer, and I have an eye patch in the picture.
And now you've admitted to it on national TV.
I used to yell.
Steve Wozniak, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.